Podcast. Buckle up, everyone. We're going to talk aliens, UFOs, ghosts, spiritual and paranormal. From all of the three moons, beyond your wildest dreams. Dead Tony. Nice.
TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark savage!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah podcast, man. I'm excited, delighted to be with you guys again for another show. This is what we do. Shout out to all the tribe. Shout out to everybody who's listening live on all the streaming platforms out there. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitch, all the Twitch people. Shout out to all the trolls on Twitch. That's where they hang out at. Shout out to you guys. Good stuff. Man, excited about today's talk. It's going to be really good. Subject dealing with spirituality, recovery, something that's really near and dear to my heart. I love to explore the different ways that we can overcome our past traumas and addictions and things like that, why these things are in our life. So I'm going to be talking to my guest today about his work with those subjects as well. I want to give a shout out to everybody who is supporting my work via Patreon. This is a listener-supported, listener-funded show. Could not do it without your help. Thank you guys for co-creating with me, helping me bring this to the table. You guys are awesome. Shout out to some of the latest patrons within the last week or so. Shout out to Katie Stewart, Jerry Lomax III, and Crystal Lee. Thank you guys for all the support. If you want to support, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of music. There's 200 plus songs on there right now. There's unreleased music. Everybody keeps inboxing me, asking me when I'm going to put out new music. Listen, there's already new music there. You get access to it by becoming a patron. Check it out. Also, our Thursday night School of the Mystics, which is the community aspect to what we're building here. You get access to that. We like to tap in through prayer, breath work, guided meditation, open-ended conversations, man, just to roll ideas off of one another. So if you're looking for community, make sure you check out the Patreon and the membership, inner circle, all that cool stuff that is available there. Also, December the 12th, we are doing our co-ed retreat. So this is for men and women who want to hit the woods for the reset, refresh, and renew retreat with us. The last couple that we've been doing have been amazing. They've been each one has been different, but so beautiful at the same time, with the revolving cast of people who have been coming out of the woodwork to join in with us, man, and to create this beautiful, unique weekend in the woods. And so laying some things down, picking some things up. It's been amazing. So if you want to get tickets to that, seating is limited. I think we have like 6 tickets left. So make sure you get your tickets ASAP. Go to TruthSeekah.com to get those. Also, my program is coming up. I'm helping healers heal, launching you out there into your spiritual entrepreneur, spiritual business, and giving you all the tools and assets to step out in that for the first time. If you're needing help in those areas as well, 6-week program is coming up. It's launching, I believe, October the 18th. Again, details are at TruthSeekah.com. Go there and check it out. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's discussion. My friend is joining me today, TJ Woodward. TJ, what's up, brother? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here. And like you, spirituality and recovery are my two favorite topics to discuss. So I'm grateful to be here.
Awesome, man. So I've got a little bit of a what would you say? I got a little bit of experience dealing with recovery and the spiritual part, especially coming from the AA side. Now, are you connected to those realms at all? The AA healing and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's, early in my own recovery, I got sober in 1986. 12-step program saved my life. And I was, that was a big part of my early path. Honestly, for well over a decade or two, honestly, that was a big part of my early recovery. And I would say it laid the groundwork for me in such a powerful way. So many amazing, loving people there that really wanted to lend a hand and share their experience, how they actually walked through and broke their own cycle of addiction.
That's awesome. Recently, I've got a friend of mine who finally started working the program, right? Kind of been in and out of little recovery programs and stuff, and it didn't really work. I guess he didn't really want it bad enough. But when he decided to work the programs, like, we found out that it works, right? And that's with any of the modalities and any of the different recovery programs or discipleship, discipline, those kind of things, they work. And so it was interesting because they invited me to do some guided meditations for the people to actually go in and find inner healing through a guided meditation. So I went with a lot of these people who are recovering addicts and stuff, and was able to lead them. So it was real beautiful. So just to see how, like, even they're incorporating the spirituality into it, like the spiritual side of recovery, and going through those 12 steps and stuff. And you see, recently I was listening to a podcast with Mike Tyson, and one of the guys, one of his mentors, was talking about how the 12-step programs mimic like these psilocybin journeys that a person goes through with this inward reflection, and I need to go make amends, and I need to ask for forgiveness, and I need to right my wrongs, and takes you through this process of even like coming to grips with like what plant medicines are doing for people as well. So there's like all of these different modalities and realms that are echoing this healing in these kind of steps that are throughout all types of religion, right? It's in the Bible, it's in plant medicine, it's in AA, it's in spirituality. So just to see how we are like, everyone is really big into the inner healing now and going through these types of spiritual processes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what you're speaking to is so powerful, because there are so many different paths available to people now. And yet at the core of them, the essential truths, if you will, are really very, very similar, right? And for me, spirituality is about a journey inward. It's about returning to that place of inner perfection. We come into this world wide open, perfectly connected with the truth of who we are, our own beingness. And then we come to planet Earth for whatever reason, whether we signed up for it, it's random. We could debate that and talk about that for hours, but for whatever reason, we came here and we end up getting programmed to believe that we're not a whole and perfect spiritual being. And so, I think the connection with addiction is pretty obvious. That existential separation from our true nature is a very painful way to live. And then people seek relief from that. And so then recovery, in whatever form you take, whether that's 12-step, there are a lot of different paths now. I created Conscious Recovery a few years ago as another path toward returning to that essential nature. So for me, recovery is more about unlearning and moving through all those layers of illusion so that we can get back to our true nature.
And for you with the conscious recovery, was that just something that was revealed to you? Is it, because obviously it's like if it's truth, it's going to be, you know what I'm saying, mimicked by a lot of different modalities, and other people are going to say it, versus just like, I created it, this is what it is, right? Everything is speaking this healing. Again, talking about the plant medicines, or even different sects and forms of religion give you various ways of forgiveness and inner child healing and things like that, if you take those steps. And so for you, how did you come up with the different modalities that were working for you, that you can actually take people through this stuff as well with conscious recovery?
Well, it started first with my own personal experience. You know, when I got into recovery, it wasn't an instant relief for me when I put down the drugs and alcohol, because what I quickly realized was that was managing something. And what it was managing is something you already mentioned, and that was a lot of trauma in my past that I hadn't yet healed, and also that disconnection, and then a sense of shame. I really believed I was broken. And I met a remarkable woman when I was about a year sober, roughly, named Mary Helen Brownell, who really changed my life. She was a devotee of Sai Baba's. She was a student of Eastern thought, and she brought in a really different approach. And that approach is, what if we are this whole and perfect spiritual being, and that addiction was really us trying to return to a sense of wholeness, right? It was like an outward search for that feeling of inner connection. So I started working with her and had some really profound experiences that really laid the groundwork for a kind of a different approach, because I think a lot of times people that have an addiction are labeled as an addict or labeled as broken in some way. And I've been working in the addiction treatment field for 12 years. And so through my own experience of this new approach that's a little bit different, and through looking at most of the modalities in treatment, we're only looking at the symptoms and behaviors without actually healing some of the trauma and the disconnection and the shame. That's how I created Conscious Recovery. It was really out of my own experience, first in my own recovery, and then with many years of working with clients.
That's awesome. So when it comes to like doing that inner work, it's like, I guess, you know, a lot of the different modalities deal with, I guess at least the popular ones, they deal with the symptoms, right? Versus going down to the root.
Yes.
Almost like modern medicine, where, you know, we could treat the symptoms. And if that's the case, we kind of have you as like it's like an MLM in a sense, because we're going to continue to treat your symptoms versus going down to the root and like fixing you and stuff. So that's the interesting thing with it, is that you have to go to the root of the trauma, of the addiction, right? Because the addiction is just a symptom of you calling out for more, of you feeling unworthy, of you even wanting to feel anything. Like, I just want to feel, and these drugs is like gives me an instant feeling, instant gratification. There's so many different ways, but going to the root of that, and I guess one of the, you know what I'm saying, most interesting parts of what you're talking about with this healing is the understanding that there is a aspect of you, or at least you in general, that is perfect, right? Is already healed, is that knows everything. We hear different stuff like, you know, connecting with the higher self. Like there's a version of you like in space or in heaven or whatever that is perfected. Maybe you can communicate with that aspect of you, which is the true you. That's kind of like your avatar watching what's going on here. But drawing that power from a place of you or a God, right? A higher power, with dealing with AA or Christianity or any of these other modalities. The fact that there's an aspect of you that's already healed, and that you need to connect with that part of yourself. What is that process like for you to do it, and leading people through that process?
Well, you're speaking to the root of it, right? Because as you said, in Western in the Western medical model, we treat symptoms and behaviors. And that has been true with behavioral health or with addiction treatment. And I love that you're using the word healing, because I really want us to shift the conversation from addiction treatment to addiction healing. And as you have said, it starts with a recognition that there is a place within me that is whole and perfect, that's unharmed and unharmable. And I think a lot of counselors, therapists, and clinicians, very well-meaning, have been trained to diagnose and treat. But unfortunately, most of them have been trained to only look at the symptoms, as you said, right? So if we continue to focus only on the symptoms, someone might go to treatment, they go to treatment for 30 days, they have a physical detox, there's a stabilization that happens and they feel better, and then they go out into the world with this recovery plan. But most of these recovery plans are still focused on the symptoms and behaviors, right? So it's, I'm going to avoid this, I'm going to do this in terms of communicating with my partner, I'm going to address these issues at work. But what we're talking about is a much deeper healing. And that is, how do I actually return to that recognition of my true nature? And the process, as you're asking the question, what's the process? So for me, it's twofold. To say it really simply, it's reconnecting with that essential nature. And that comes through prayer and meditation, mindfulness, that can come through chanting, that can come through yoga, a spiritual practice of remembering that truth and practicing that connection. Connection is not really the word, because it's really who and what we are. So it's remembering that. But then it's also looking at all the layers of trauma, shame, and disconnection that are on top of that essential truth. So it's also, what do we need to address and unlearn, but not just through the symptoms, but really getting down to, when did I originally separate from my true nature? What were those conditions? How do I start taking care of? And you mentioned that inner child work, that my young self that made these huge decisions with very limited information. And so getting back to that true nature, while also spending time on what needs to be unlearned, discovered, and lived beyond, are really the sort of the two pathways to conscious recovery.
One of the things that, from a Christian perspective, we had a problem with, like AA, was dealing with the fact that, you know, these people identified themselves that they would always be addicted, that they would always be an addict, that they would always be a drunk, right? Now, from your perspective, is that something that stands out to you? Because, like, we want you to be healed, we want you to be delivered, set free, and you never struggle with that again, right? Versus this idea is that if I have one sip, I'm going back into it head first, you know, that kind of thing. And it was just always this, like, you never got free of it. Like, it was a monster always lurking. Maybe that's truth, right? But I know that's something that we always had, like, a problem with AA, because you were always addicted. And I used to hate talking to these individuals, and I'm like, man, you can be set free, man. You can find healing, you can find peace, and you ain't got to worry about that. And no, I'll always be an addict, I'll always be this. And so I think that notion scares them away from alcohol or drugs or whatever the case is. The fact that it is a monster that wants to come and get them. It's a side of them that they hate that is still real. And maybe there's a lot of truth to that. But for you and what you do bring to the table, what do you see about that I'm always an addict or I'm always in recovery kind of thing?
Well, I think there are a couple of different ways I can answer it. One is that could be a truth in relative reality, but not the ultimate truth, right? The ultimate truth is there is a place within me that's unharmable. And so the question I ask is, what does it create when? And that question is really powerful for me. So what does it create when I believe that I have a lifelong chronic illness that I can never heal, I can only treat? What does it create when I believe that I'm fundamentally broken in some way, which is what a lot of times people get told. You're fundamentally different than other people. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. It's not something you can ever heal, but just something you can treat on a daily basis. Here's the trick, though. A lot of times the ego, which can be a trickster, might hear me saying, well, then if I can heal from addiction, then I can drink normally. That's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, and what you're saying here, is that the addiction is the symptom. It's not the issue, right? It's something that I have, but not who I am. And if I continue to affirm that I am this broken person, and if that's a lifelong inner dialogue and that frequency that I'm holding by believing in my own brokenness, I think it creates a lot of limitation. We could take this deeper and talk about the literal disease it creates in the body. But the question that I ask myself and I invite others to ask isn't, is this good or bad or right or wrong? It is what gets created when so what gets created when I believe that I am broken in some way or that I have this lifelong chronic illness versus what gets created when I believe that the addiction or the substance use was a symptom of something. And I can become curious about that part of me that is still whole. What gets created in those two different scenarios. And then that's an individual choice for the person that's in recovery, how they want to frame that in their own life.
So with that being said, for you personally, what was your addiction? Was it alcohol? Was it drugs?
It was for me it was alcohol from age like 13. I got sober young. I got sober just before I turned 21, so 34 years ago. It was also ecstasy, and you know what I know about that. I know there's a lot of different names now, whether we call that Molly or MDMA, but that particular drug, what happened for me is the moment that I took that drug the first time, it did break down all those barriers, right? It did remove all those layers of trauma. Now it was done chemically, so it wasn't necessarily a deep and authentic experience, but it was one of the first moments when I actually remembered my true nature. So that's why I frame that sometimes addiction itself can be a search for wholeness, because when I took that the first time, I remembered my true nature. Now, for me, someone might be able to do that and have that experience, and then a year later come back to that and have that experience again. For me, it was like, oh, the next night I wanted more.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a year, and it became a really, really dark period of my life, because I felt so broken inside, and I was searching for someone or something to try to heal that. So those were the two substances that I was using.
Now, and there's so much to say about that. I've got friends who have similar stories. I got one friend. He was right under 400 pounds, and you know, never was a ladies' man or nothing like that. And so his brother was he had connections in Atlanta, and had him out there at a party, and went to a party and gave him ecstasy, and there's all of these beautiful women like hanging on him, kissing him, and this is the first time, you know, and it's like treating, you know, they don't see his, you know, weight or whatever, and so that was addictive. Like, hey, this is the key, and it got to, you know, like you, every night, every weekend, we need this. If without it, we're broken. But what that does to your emotions, man, and your, you know what I'm saying, your serotonin and your dopamine, like this instant gratification. We've learned the hard way that instant gratifications are never good with anything. I think the key to life is dealing with delayed gratifications, like putting in work, working hard for friendships, for love, you know what I'm saying, for a job, a career. Like, it's delayed gratification. You work hard today, you got to plant, you got to put something in the ground tomorrow. When it blossoms and you reap the harvest, then you can rejoice. But there is work and stuff that go into it. So dealing with a lot of the instant gratifications, again, alcohol, I mean, every drug, you know, you're chasing that dragon, trying to go back to that first experience. With that being said, going back to the alcohol for you, is it something now, because this is the difference between like AA and stuff like that, is it something where you can enjoy a drink now? Can you have a glass of wine, or is it lurking there ready to you know what I'm saying, devour you? Or is it something you've come to terms with, and now you can deal with it responsibly as far as alcohol is concerned?
Well, so for me, it's actually something different, because people often ask me that question, right? So you were young, how do you even know? Like, if you don't have this lifelong label of being an addict or an alcoholic, which I don't, then can I drink normally? But for me, this is what I want to say. My life in recovery is so rich and so full that I don't have any desire to drink. So for myself, I am choosing abstinence. I have chosen abstinence. It's what works for me. I remember my friend Doug, when I met him, he got clean and sober, as they call it, at 14. And when I met him, he was in his late 20s. So it was like 13, 14 years. And he said, I don't even know if I actually have what people label as an addiction, or I'm not going to label myself as an addict or an alcoholic. But what I know is my life today is so beautiful and so open and so rich. everything I was seeking in that drug or in the alcohol, I actually have created in my spiritual journey. So I personally would not want to, one, you could say I wouldn't want to take that risk, but I don't feel like it's looming. I feel like it's a moment to moment choice that I don't really necessarily even desire that path now because I love my life sober. And the truth is, we don't change habits based on what we don't want. We change habits based on what we do want. So if I focus on what I want in my life, that just doesn't even include the entertaining of the idea of having a drink that would help me relax, right? Because it's not going to help me relax in the same way as a meditation practice or my spiritual journey.
Now, as far as that's concerned, with different, outside stimulants and things like that, something outside of ourselves, that's the biggest thing, is we need something outside of ourselves to be fulfilled. And I think that that's what true spirituality teaches you. And even the Bible, that the kingdom of heaven is within you, and we don't go without, we go within to go without, kind of thing, right? So what about like plant medicines, whether it's psilocybin or any type of other stimulants? Like we just did a personal cacao ceremony, me and my wife, really beautiful, heart opening, legal, natural, those kind of things. What about your relationship with plant medicines, or even the idea of those things?
So the idea of those things is I'm very open to that, because I've heard people having really profound experiences. It's not something that I've chosen to do. And I don't know if that, just transparently, I don't know if that's an old program from my early recovery. It's like, that strict guidance. But for me, it hasn't been part of my path. I have seen it really work miracles in people's lives. So, I personally am open to that idea. But for my own journey, I choose not to do it. And that's just where I'm landing just today. Yeah.
Understood. Connecting with that true you, that authentic self. What are some of the different ways, again, to connect with the perfected self? And what does it do when we connect, or we see are we connecting with something outside of us, or is it us? Again, like we like to talk about the higher self. It's perfected. God is perfected. There's a future version of you somewhere else that's perfected, versus like, I am already this. What is the, engaging with that look like for you, like in a meditation, or even just being mindful that I am beautiful, I am loved, I am whole, those kind of things?
Well, I think there's a paradox, right? Because I think it's both inside and outside. Mm-hmm. I think there is an outer search for the idea or the concept or the experience of some kind of higher power. And ultimately it's within, right? It's within each and every one of us. And the reality, I think the greater reality, is there actually isn't a separation in the way we might believe it is, right? Because many of us have been trained to believe that we're separate from God or separate from source. But the truth is, we're all a spark of that divinity, right? And as you said, Jesus came, and many great teachers, but Jesus was one that said the kingdom of heaven is within. So what does that actually mean? That means the consciousness of the concept or the idea of heaven, whatever that means to us, lives within me. And so the paradox comes in this. It's the journey is inward, and yet we want to connect with people and we want to connect with the world. So it's both and, not either or. But ultimately, I think the journey is about returning to that remembrance of the way we came into the world, which is deeply connected with our true nature.
With that being said, there's this idea. I keep going back to the Christian thing. That's just my upbringing in a lot of realms that I'm in. Yeah. There's the idea of original sin, right? That you are dirty, that you are broken, kind of thing. But then on the other hand, there's like this, the aspect of, original perfection as well. There's a lot of Christians even talking about that now, that we were perfected before we fell, or whatever the case is. And that's our original state, is a state of perfection. And in Christ, we get to kind of access that and go back to that. So whether it is a meditation, whether it is prayer, they are engaging with their perfected self, right? And I guess as they're doing it, they're becoming perfected. They're dealing with their trauma, those kind of things. So what about the idea of original sin in that aspect, that I am broken and I need to be fixed? Because I think for a lot of us, especially with addiction, we I think we get there eventually that we're, hey, something's wrong with me, man. Like, I need help. I need it, whether it's the trauma, whether I'm a victim, whatever it is, like something's wrong. So identifying that either I'm messed up or I've messed up or whatever the case is. So with acknowledging that you have a problem, right? That I am broken or I need some help, I need some guidance versus like, God loves me the way I am and I'm going to be this way till I die. Like acknowledging the fact that something's off. What about that?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where the paradox comes in, right? Because I had to identify where I had separated from my original perfection, right? So I actually believe that at the core of each and every one of us is this essential self. Now, it is in my separation from that. So I come into the world, I have these traumatic experiences. Most of us weren't taught that in school or even in church or in our, homes. Oh, you're whole and perfect exactly as you are. You're a perfect emanation of source energy. Most of us did not get that information. Most of us were told there's something wrong with us and we need to act a certain way or do something in a certain way to be worthy. And so that original separation from our true nature is what I think creates this idea that we need to strive towards something in order to be worthy. And yet underneath all of that, there's still this whole and perfect being. So there's the reason I use the term paradox is I can say, yes, I'm a whole and perfect being, but because I've forgotten that, I don't act that way in the world. So then there's all this evidence to support that I'm broken or that I'm damaged in some way. And so I need to be accountable for that. But, any harm I've ever caused myself or others, and God knows I have, it's always been because I had forgotten my true nature. I believed in my own brokenness. I believed that I was a result of my trauma. I believed that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. In other words, hurt people, right? Generational trauma that gets passed down, that got passed down through my family system on both sides of my family. I was experiencing those. And when I believed that's who I was acting that way in the world. So what we need to do, obviously, is be accountable for our own behavior and our own that sense of separation and what that created. But the ultimate truth is it's not who I am. It's what I have, right? Just like I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. So being able to be accountable for that, as you said, yeah, something's not working here, but ultimately that's not the truth.
Having this discussion, we seem to overcomplicate things, right? We have the analytical mind. It's, going into the psyche of what all this stuff represents to us, all that kind of stuff that's coming up. And again, we have a way of overcomplicating it. But, the process that you have is touted upon being simple, right? So,
Yeah.
like, what's simple about it versus, like, us trying to, overcomplicate things or think it's going to take longer than it really is. That's a big one. This is going to take me years to undo, but just even in the power of prayer and mindfulness and meditation, like instantly there's layers that's, revealed to you of who you are, of the breakthrough, of how beautiful you are, the power that you have, all of those things. How simple are these techniques?
Well, as you said, it can take a lifetime, but it can also happen in an instant. And the instant experience of remembering my true nature is what I think is different, right? Because even in some of the 12-step models, it's like I need to work all of these steps so that I can, become who I want to be. And yes, that can be true. And at the same time, in conscious recovery, I'm also recognizing that there's this whole and perfect spiritual being, and I can have an instant experience of that. That can happen instantly. And so how does that happen? It happens first, as you said, in a very simple way. This isn't a mental process. I mean, the intellect is important, but many of us have started to believe that that's who we are. I am my perspectives. I am my opinions. We see that in our culture running rampant now. Mm-hmm. I am my belief system, my BS belief system. But the truth is, essentially, I'm something much different. And so whether it's prayer or meditation or spending just time in the silence or time in nature, but I think starting with a very, very simple yet profound knowing that there is a whole and perfect being, that in itself creates something really different. The foundational principle of conscious recovery is underneath all addictive behavior is a whole and perfect, or an essential self that is whole and perfect. Just getting that, but not just intellectually, but really experiencing that, that can create an instant experience that is very, very different than a lifelong process.
Yeah. It's like layers to the onion too, right? It gets deeper and deeper, and there's more and more. Now, what about people who reject that? What about like people that you've tried to work with, or or have you, who just can't believe that because they've done too much wrong? There's people who think that God could never forgive them because they've just done some despicable things and they've turned their back. And as much as you tell them, as much as you try to work with them, to even to allow them to experience God's love or whatever, they're just in this place of like this idea that they can never be forgiven, that there's nothing good inside of them, and they'll always be this way. They'll all, a lot of them feel even like rejected by God, and God, and I think in their mind, rightfully so. I've done too much. So have you had those people that you tried to work with it where they just don't get it, they can't see it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because I would say that maybe even all of us have had that experience,
Yeah.
right? Believing in our own brokenness, in that experience of shame, of that sense that I'm not worthy. So for me, it's not really it's not really my job to try to convince someone that there's a place within them that's whole and perfect, but just to start to explore. Because sometimes it's as simple as, do you remember a time when you felt that? Or can you look at a small child, or what I call the pre-programmed human, right? A 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and can you look at them and see them as fundamentally flawed in some way? Do you remember the experience of that? And if they can get in touch with that, then the question then can become, do you think that still lives within you somewhere? And then we can become curious about how we return to that. So sometimes people will also hear me say, you just return to that place of wholeness. There's no need to do any more work. Yes, we can have that experience. And yet all of the stuff that I've done in the world, it is important for me, as you said, to go in and clean it up and do some of the work. But I think the fundamental knowing, and not just here, but really experiencing our true nature, that fundamental shift, I think, creates a really different relationship with everything that we've done and everything that's happened to us. Because when I really understand that the truth of who I am is not what's happened to me, the truth of who I am is not what I've done, there's a greater reality, then it makes all that other, stuff that lives in relative reality, our life experience, our traumas, the things that we've done, the way I've harmed myself and others, which every human being does that, right? So again, I'm not sure what this, Earth School is about, but I have a sense it's something about us learning how to remember who we truly are.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, we talked about, Christianity, other religions, AA, this higher power that I'm getting my source from here. Is that necessarily a bad thing if it works? You know what I'm saying? Versus like, no, you're already perfected, go within. And I know that's what you teach, but like just the idea that I can draw, I like having an umbilical cord to a God that is perfect, that is giving me this perfect juice, if you will, that's renewing me, cleaning me. I'm now worthy because he says I'm worthy. Like, it is external, right? It is Jesus that's outside of me. Obviously, it's Christ that comes to live within you, but even that, it's something external that comes within. Is there problems with that? Obviously, if your theology changes, if the church gets mad at you, like there's obviously stuff that can kind of come and mess and jack that up for you, and now you're back where you started. There's a lot of scenarios that could happen, but when it's external, like let me connect with God to feel okay, right? And it is an internal thing. That's where we've been confused. It is all consciousness. Even if we think it's outside of us, it really is inside of us. But it's just that you know what I'm saying, the symbolism of I am connecting with, like, I suck, but he's good, but he makes me good because he loves me, or his grace empowers me, or whatever. Is there anything wrong with that, or if it's working for people?
Well, yeah, I like to move out of the paradigm of good and bad and right and wrong and ask the question, what does it create, right? So I think it's wonderful if someone has that experience. I've had that experience. I've had that experience where it felt like something outside of me really helped me to feel loved again, or really helped me to feel worthy, whether that's a human being or the idea of a higher power. And at the same time, they're not really mutually exclusive, right? So when I get in touch with my true nature, I realize that we're all perfect expressions of that power. So regardless of religion or not religion, because there are all these different paths that lead hopefully to the same place, and that place is love ultimately, right? Is this helping me to be more useful on the planet? Is this helping me to love myself more so that I can be the frequency of love on the planet? So in that way, then it's less about the different paths or how it looks different. It's more about, like, we're on this journey together of really learning how to reconnect with ourselves, regardless if that's through a religious path that has, you know, an external concept of a higher power, or something internal, or both, really. Because really, ultimately, I think the question is, how do I love more? How do I serve more? How can I be on this planet tuning out of the frequency of brokenness of myself and the world, and back into my original perfection? And when, you know, we're talking about perfection here, we're not talking about this human perfection of doing everything perfectly. We're talking about the idea. So if you are a Christian, and if that is your path, then you know that that Jesus, the Christ, you know, because to me, the Christ is a consciousness. It's a knowing, right? He talked about, you know, the Father within. So Jesus was here to teach us that love is the ultimate truth, as many other spiritual masters. So then the question becomes less, is this the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it? And more about, does this allow me to be more loving in the world, in my relationships with myself and the world? Does it allow me to serve more? And those questions, I think, are more rich, right? Because I think our mind wants to debate, right? Is this the right path? Is that the right path?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of that, which allows me to be more loving and more open.
Yeah. And I think that the biggest key, again, we're talking about internal and external, like going within and without. But the biggest thing that I think you mentioned is just about sitting in silence and being okay to be with yourself. Because, like, you're talking about good deeds and loving more, but even a lot of people have that contingent upon God's grace, or I'm a good person because I help people. I'm a good person because I serve the community, or I'm helping other people. And so, and that's all good. But again, once that's stripped away, when you're not helping people, can you sit by yourself and still be good, right? Can you sit by yourself and know that you are loved and that you are accepted and you are whole, without, I got to go here, I have to support, I have to give my money, I have to do this, I have to do that, right? Because a lot of us get caught up in that, and that's what makes us good, is our good deeds. But that's not the case, right? It's being able to sit with yourself, be okay, know that you're loved, and go within. And you have to deal with the trauma to do that, because there's things that are blocking you from doing that, and that is the trauma. That is the things that come up when you try to get quiet. That monster that's yelling, it is the monster, the idea that you'll always be addicted, like we've talked about. For me, that would be a monster. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, being able to sit with yourself without to really step into being a human being instead of a human doing, and being okay and knowing that you're loved and knowing that you draw from all of this, that's not contingent upon your works. The scriptures teach that. That's why I love them, right? It's of grace. It's not of works, because any man can boast who has greater works. And it's really cool. I listen to and read a lot of Manly P. Hall, and he talks a lot about how religion starts with this external, exoteric, and a corporate group or assembly of people that meet together, but eventually it turns into this inward discipline, this inward journey that you have with God and all the other beings that come personified as well. So knowing it is definitely about going within. I think we again mentioning Jesus, he did that all the time, stepping away for hours to pray and meditate and have these spiritual experiences that followed him, because I think they were doing the inner work. I think that they were submitted to that process, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, the teachings of Jesus were really radical, and they still are, and that is that love is more powerful than any rules or laws that govern what we call humanity, right? And so I think that sometimes gets forgotten, right? That it was about love, and that it was about returning to that love and being that love. And I really appreciate that you talked about the doing. In our culture, specifically in the United States, we're taught from a very, very early age that we need to do certain things in order to be worthy, or that we need to be a doer. We start asking our kids at a very early age, what are you going to be when you grow up? We're not really asking them what they're going to be. We're asking them what they're going to do, right? So they're supposed to answer with a role. And I remember I was supposed to answer with a role. And there were some that were really acceptable to say and some that weren't. And I remember there's a story of a kindergartner that on the test, what are you going to be when you grow up? And the kid said happy. And the teacher said, that's not an acceptable answer, right? So, what we're saying here is that the conscious being leads to conscious doing, right? And the more I'm dedicated to spending time connecting with my true nature, the more I can be beneficial on the planet. But as you said, there can be an ego trap of I'm going to become worthy because of all these great things I'm doing. And I see people do that, in recovery and religion and spirituality. Yeah. Nothing fundamentally wrong with it. But I think what you're pointing to is the deeper experience is, let me spend dedicated time in the silence, really knowing my true nature, who and what I really am. And then from there, let me be that in the world, right? Yeah. Let me be that frequency of love. And then that's when it's a game changer. And that's when it goes back to a paradox. I don't need to do anything to be worthy, but because I really understand how worthy I am, I want to do all of that. But I want to do that from the frequency of love, not from the frequency of there's something wrong here and I need to be a savior. I need to go in and save someone. But from a frequency, just like with me with conscious recovery, this changed my life, this path of returning to my true nature. So it's my gift to share it. There's a place within me that knows that it's mine to give now, but not from a place of I'm only worthy if I can get this message out. But because I understand at a really different level my own path toward remembering my wholeness, then I naturally want to bring that to the world. Very, very different energy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I guess in the world we're told that, again, you're talking about being accepted. If there's a lot of contingencies, if you're loved, and that gets into so much. We're talking about love and acceptance, but we've been talking about this a lot. I've got a friend of mine who his idea of wealth was you'll be wealthy if, or you can have money if, and it's like all of these weird ifs that we've society or our parents have put on us, that if we don't line up with that if, then we don't get it. And so, I had this friend who he talked about having to apologize to money and like have this idea of like these preconceived notions that he had on wealth and on money that weren't good, that were hindering him. And this is trauma, but he, as a kid, a bunch of his friends were going to McDonald's, he said, or going to the store, and they all had money from their parents. And he goes to his dad and asks for $5 to go to the store with his friends. And his dad pulls the money out and goes to hand it to him and says, "Wait, didn't you get an F on your report card? And didn't you get detention last week? You're not getting no damn money." And pulls the money back and puts it on his pockets, in his pocket. So money, wealth, abundance, all of that within that $5 notion right there, was the fact that he has to perform, that he has to do good to receive or be worthy of money, and all of these ideas from that one instant. That's the trauma that we have to identify, like, because it's stopping you. I think on that path of that true self-love and knowing that you're loved by God, there's going to be those things that pop up and say, "Oh, you're not loved, you did this." And so you have to kind of get over that. You have to either see you yourself or that situation the way that God sees it, which is love, 100%, perfect love. getting over that and figuring out once you're, why are you uncomfortable in the silence? Like I know people, and these are Christian, well-to-do people who like they can't be quiet, they can't sit still because their thoughts and their past and all the trauma, it's overwhelming. So they always have to be doing something, whether it's preaching, whether it's teaching, whether it's talking and ministering to somebody even on the telephone, and they're never just in that place of perfect peace because you have to deal with the things. I mean, going back to, again, like the psychedelic stuff, like you have to deal with the things that you've been suppressing. Once you're in this place of like doing that inner work, the stuff that you've been suppressing for 20 years, 5 years, this week, it's coming up. You got to deal with it. And so, but it's good. We need to deal with it, right? Because we're responding to people, situations, out of hurt and out of resentment that, it's unfair to those people, that we judge and we have preconceived notions because of something somebody did to us 20 years ago or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. And you're speaking to something that's so important because like, let's imagine your friend in that moment, there was not just a belief that was created, there was an experience, right? So money is connected somehow to the idea of worthiness. So I'm bad, so I don't deserve money, right? Now, an intellectual understanding of that isn't actually going to shift that. That's just going to be an understanding of that. And I think that's why people can spend 20 years in therapy with understanding the patterns, or this came from my parents, or this was a belief system that I picked up. But I think the fundamental question is, how do we actually start to shift that? And so if we remember our little self that had that experience, we can start to care for that little self. So when I was 5 years old, I decided I was stupid. I won't get into the story, but it was one of those moments in that exact way. And so I understood that was the moment I decided I was stupid, but just understanding that intellectually wasn't going to change that. What I had to do, and what we do in conscious recovery, is we really start to integrate and take care of that little 5-year-old that decided I was stupid. How do I start to care for and allow that 5-year-old to feel? You've talked about it throughout the show today, that the emotion that is attached to that's really what we need to create, a space where it's safe to start feeling. And many of us, men get this more in our culture, but everyone gets it on some level. It's not okay to feel. Maybe you grew up in a family where it wasn't okay to be angry, or maybe people weren't really talking about what was happening. In my family, it was go to your room until you can stop crying, or let me give you something so you stop having this feeling. So from a very early age, it's not really okay for us to be present with what's happening internally. So a huge part of recovery is integrating, reparenting, allowing ourselves to be present with what is. And as you've said, there are a lot of people that are running from the experience of simply being alone with ourselves. So that alone, being able to be present with ourselves, sitting in the silence, noticing what comes up. I think a lot of us have an idea that meditation is supposed to be, we sit and we have this experience of bliss. That does happen sometimes, but it also might be just as useful to have a meditation where I notice I'm agitated, but guess what? I learned how to be present with that agitation for 10 minutes. That can be profound.
That's big. And I guess that leads us to our next question. You're kind of answering as we go along, but Christy is asking a question here. It says, how can a person get in touch with their spiritual side with a few practical steps? What would you tell them? And I think a little bit of all of this, what you've been sharing, kind of implies, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of it is learning to be in the silence. But as I said, it's not necessarily about let me try to quiet the mind, because that's what I was hearing when I first started meditating. I don't know if that's what was being said or that's just what I heard, but I heard the intention of meditation is to quiet the mind. But when I understood that mindfulness or meditation was really a practice of learning to be with myself, then that was a game changer, because I thought I can set the timer for 10 or 15 minutes and just be present with what is. So it's recognizing or tuning into the original frequency. I think Eckhart Tolle uses the practice of feeling the energy field beneath the skin, right? Can I get in touch with an energy field that I am? Can I get in touch with the frequency of love? Can I become curious? Another practice that's really practical for your listener, the viewer, is to ask questions. So I use this process called living in the question. It's something we do in conscious recovery. I choose an open-ended question and I just sit with that throughout the day. Maybe it's for 15 minutes in meditation. Maybe I take a walk in nature and ponder the question. Maybe I look in the mirror and ask my question over and over again. An open-ended question like, what else is possible today? Where did I first get this idea? What else is possible for me? How does it get even better than this? I remember at a time where I was using the open-ended question, where can I be most useful today? And I would just live in that question. So sometimes it's about questioning the beliefs that have been, put on top of the original experience. So I hope that those are tangible in terms of how do we get in touch with our true nature.
It almost seems like it's just a process of exploring mindfulness, right? Being mindful of the things we've been suppressing, right?
Yeah, being aware.
Trying to do things so we don't have to think about it,
Yeah, a wise teacher once said there are 3 steps to it: awareness, awareness, and awareness.
Yeah. It's huge, and just to explore that, see how it feels, being able to sit with yourself, knowing that you're loved, knowing that there is bliss, you are connected to it as a umbilical cord to God, but it's within. You are already there, and so sometimes we just need to be aware of that, because when you put your awareness on it, you immediately attract it into your life, and then once you identify, then once you speak it, then once you acknowledge it, then you create it in your life, whether that's peace, whether that's, financial security, it works for everything. It definitely works with trauma. It definitely works with the things that you've been suppressing, but your future, setting yourself up, like the desires of your heart, don't try to, suppress them because they're too big. Your dreams are too big. So let's not speak on them. Let's not tell anybody, right? Let's actively explore this stuff and be mindful of it. And see how it takes to get there. Once you're able to do that, then I feel like there are different steps that present themselves to you on how to attract that into your life. Whether it's you get offended easily. Okay, if you're mindful that hey, that's a character flaw, that's something that's going on. Every time somebody disagrees with me, I get offended. Let me first of all acknowledge it, and then try to trace it back. And then I feel like God, the universe, shows you ways to deal with it. The reason you're offended is because you don't want to be proven wrong. It's because this happened, whatever the case is. And so being able to trace that stuff back on how we can work with God to deal with that stuff and move it out the way so that there are no blockages with us communicating, engaging with our perfected self, which is who we already are.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to recognize that we can only step into the life we believe we deserve. But that's about 100% of the time, right? I can only step into the life I believe I deserve. So if you're looking at an example of easily offended, I think the questioning process can be really powerful here. And that is, when did this first start in my life? And if I can start to remember a time when I felt like I needed to defend myself, or a time that I felt that I had to have the right answer. We live in a very answer-focused culture. And I think questions are much more important than answers. And right now in our culture, we're seeing this elevated or ramped up with social media and the opinionating. You mentioned trolls, right? So this whole idea that we are our opinions and we need to get our opinion across. And to me, it goes back to the experience of learning how to be present with myself. Someone says something, I notice an internal reaction. Can I be present with this rather than trying to deflect? Because there's an instantaneous, I feel better if I push this off on you. But what happens when I really recognize what just got touched, what's happening internally? Can I learn how to be present with this? And then the behavior of needing to opinionate actually starts to dissipate on its own.
Yeah. It's I've definitely been practicing that for a couple of years now. But you still find times where like people, lash out at you or push those buttons, and you find yourself, your blood begins to boil, whether it's somebody on Facebook or something. You're like, hold on. But the whole thing is that you're able to recognize it. Like, yeah, it's happening. The cool thing is that you notice it happening. Whereas in the past, when you wasn't mindful, you just did it like a robot. You didn't even know that you were doing it. But now that you're mindful, now you can identify it and deal with it, or withdraw from it and not follow that to whatever bridge you're about to burn. You know what I'm saying? So being mindful of it is just it's key. And even when people wrestle with it, but they're mindful of it. They don't know how to overcome it. They don't know, but you see it. Like, that's huge. You got to understand, like, most people don't see it. They don't know that they're doing these things. They don't know that they're running awesome people out of their life. They don't know that they're, doing all of this. They have these character flaws that are hurting them. But even though you're doing it too, the fact that you can see it, it's like, hold on. Like, it makes way for course correction, that you can change it, that you can stop doing it and learn what are the roots that are causing you to act this way, to respond this way. So I think they're in a good place, even with the God thing. I remember, my friend years ago just talking about how literally this guy, he thought God would never forgive him. God doesn't love him and all this kind of stuff. It's like, the fact that you still feel sorry about the things that you've done, like the fact that that you've made some mistakes, that's huge. Because you got people who don't even think they did anything wrong. The fact that you're grieving and you're conscious of these things are the proof that God is still dealing with you and he still loves you. If that was the case, you wouldn't even care. You'd be able to do evil and do wickedness and mess over people and not even care about it. Like, literally, there's people who do that. We can't fathom that because we have a conscience. Like, we feel bad about doing wrong to other people, but there are people who don't feel anything about it. So the fact that you're conscious of anything, it shows that there is progress being made, and God's not done with you.
Yeah, and when going back to like the thing about like the reaction to the opinions, because we see that a lot. I think what you're pointing to, something that's really important, is I first must recognize that it's not what I'm reading or what someone's saying to me, it's the wound that's getting touched.
Yeah.
So it's not your words that hurt me, it's that you've touched an unhealed wound. And that's the great news. The great news is getting touched, because as you said, I'm aware of this. And that's the first step. I'm aware that this is happening. But the key here is that it's mine, not yours. You did not hurt me. Your words are not hurting me. Even if it feels directed at me, I can say, wow, something is getting touched within me, and it's getting touched for my healing.
Yeah.
So then I can be curious about that. I could start asking the question, what is wanting to heal right now? So if I notice myself wanting to lash out, because as you said, all of us have this experience of, oh, that just touched something. But when I realize that it's mine, then I can say, ooh, what's wanting to heal right now? And then I don't find myself wanting to lash out, because first of all, I know that it's futile. It doesn't do anything but keep it alive. So the fundamental question is, do I want to be right or do I want to be free? Right? Would I rather be free in this moment? Would I rather be in joy?
Yeah.
Or do I want to constantly live in my reactive mind, which is just creating more division in my life, more separation, more duality? Or do I want to actually live in the frequency of love?
It's the ego. The ego serves the purpose, and it's trying to protect you. It's trying to protect you from a lot of different things, but but you find that in the end, it's making more problems for you when the ego's trying to protect you from hurt. It's trying to protect you from bad friends and gossip and ridicule and from stepping out. But you find out that once you allow it to do what it does, like it pretty much stifles you. It hinders you. So having to be mindful of those feelings that come up are good, because the fact, like you're saying, like, these are open wounds. Triggers are awesome. Triggers are amazing. It shows you that you have an open wound. What happens if somebody's cut and you touch the open wound? They jump. So hold on, this trigger, I've just been triggered because you touched a wound that is not yet healed. So pay attention to the triggers. Don't just dive into them, but pay attention to them and see how that you can be healed from it. how can you minister forgiveness to that area of your life, or to extending it to someone else that has wronged you. Like all of these things are, I feel like, are part of the process of dealing with those own inner wounds. And a lot of people, like, we won't lash out at other people, and we won't take out our hatred or self-worth and all that stuff on other people. If we don't project it, we're cutting ourselves, man. Like, we are like spiritual cutters, if you will, that we want to feel that pain and stuff. And so just having those open wounds, there's a lot of people who they're well-to-do people because they don't mess with anybody, but the pain and infliction that they cause upon themselves is devastating. So we got to be mindful that we're going through that process so that we can heal ourselves, so that we can in turn heal the world.
Yes, and I love that you use the word trigger, because in conscious recovery, I actually changed some of the commonly used language, and I changed the word trigger to activation. And the reason that I do that is a lot of times we'll talk about triggers, and we usually talk about it as an external event. But what I hear you saying is, let's be more curious about what got touched. So I use the word activation because when someone does something or something happens in my life and I call it a trigger, I might think, well, the solution is to change the trigger or to move away from the trigger. That's why we hear people talking about toxic work environments, toxic relationships. How do I wean myself off of or get rid of these relationships? But the real relationship is the relationship with self. And when I recognize that it's not the trigger, but it's what got activated, that's when I can start to heal that. That's when I can start to become much more curious about what got activated rather than the triggering incident. So if you look at it through the lens of addiction and recovery, you were talking about the ego being the protector. That's the same for addiction, right? Substance use, whatever our addiction is, that is something that's trying to protect us. And it has worked well to a certain extent, but it really isn't serving us. So in that way, we get more curious about what's happening internally than what the external or the triggering event is.
That's good. Got a question here, and I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, maybe, but maybe it's a little different. But this is from Clint. Clint says, I created at an early age a character that talks and guides me. But when I see it, I see another version of me in front of me that has more knowledge on how to love and being all in oneself. Is that healthy? Because I don't always trust that other guy in myself.
Yeah, I love that, because you're acknowledging that there's a place within you that is very wise, right? There is the place within me and within all of us that has that wisdom. And creating a character of the wise one within, I think, is really great, because it's almost like I can look at this as another being, even though it's actually something within me. Now, the trust is another question, right? And so a lot of us learn how, whether we use the framework of listen to God or listen to the inner voice or listen to the frequency of the universe, hearing it and trusting it are two different things, right? And so some of it is just, we do hear that wisdom comes with age. And I think for me, what that's been about is I've learned that when I trust that deeper inner knowing, that voice that guides me, when I trust that, things are much easier and I move more toward the life I want. I start to, through experience, trust that. So then I can ask myself, let's imagine it's a character, the wise one. Oh yeah, when I listen to the wise one, life turns out a whole lot better than it does when I listen to the narrative of I'm broken, they're broken, something's wrong here. So just being aware of that, we keep going back to that, but being aware of what happens when I trust that character that lives within me, or that one. It's almost like the old angel and devil on our shoulder.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
We do all have this internal conflict on some level of whether we call it good, bad, right, wrong, or just this knowing that I have this voice within me that will guide me in a really positive direction.
It's interesting, man. I like to study personas, right? And having that other character we're talking about. And whether they're multiple personalities, whether they serve you, like whether they're healthy, I think it's all debatable, but we see a lot of people doing it. I know we in the spiritual circles, we deal with a lot of psychics and channelers, and,
Right.
and there's people who channel certain beings. And I did this study in this video on just the idea of what if that being is just another aspect of yourself that you're channeling because you don't feel like you have the answers, but so-and-so does. Let me channel him.
Right.
When deep down you really do have the answers. You have insight, whether it helps you get into a place where you separate yourself from your carnal mind to a higher mind or whatever, just to see how that operates and to be in that self. And some people can do it without like stepping into a character. A lot of people change their voices and, hello, everyone, I am here to minister, and they have that. It's a persona. It's a step. When I put this garment on, I am the minister. When we take it off, hey, I'm me again, that kind of thing. So obviously, whether that's something psychological that goes on within our heads, but I think everyone does it. We may not give it a name. Some of us do. I remember when I was a little kid, we'd play basketball, and I would pick a basketball player that I wanted to play like for the day, and I would change it would change the way I played the game, because I knew what like his attributes, what was associated with this guy. This guy does a lot of this certain move and a lot of reverse layups. This other guy, when I'm Dennis Rodman, I'm getting nothing but rebounds. Every rebound that comes off the backboard, I'm getting it. I am taking on literally that persona in my head to start playing like that individual. And, we do it by default. We may not give it a name. We may not say we're becoming this person, but a lot of us do it without even knowing it. So I wonder if it can be healthy if we know it. It gets into a lot of weird stuff like tulpas and creating entities that eventually get a mind of their own. And that you probably get into some kind of like demon stuff that comes in there too, right? When it's a negative attributes that have a mind of its own. But it's really interesting to again explore consciousness and find out how these different ideas and things are serving us. Like that served me in a good way. Did it create a split personality while I was playing basketball, but it served me. But when I'm at home, doing something else, I wasn't even thinking about it, It's deep.
Right. I love what you're saying, because then I can become curious, right? I wonder if this is an aspect of myself. I wonder if that each and every one of us has all of that within us. How would the world change in this moment if each of us acknowledged that we are capable of everything that we see?
Yeah.
Right. It's something that's within me. And then I can start to have more compassion for myself and others. And then, as you said, I can become curious of, am I channeling another entity? Maybe. Or is this also an aspect of myself? Are the answers within me? And again, the paradox, yes, they're within me, but I also, for whatever reason, need other human connection or other relationships to help myself get clear on that.
Yeah. I think it goes back to, again, to the idea that there is a perfected self within you, a self
right.
that has everything, that knows everything, that's loved, perfect love. And if you don't believe it, you can't engage with it. But it's the fact that you believe it, and maybe even through the belief that you create it, and it serves you, because there's a perfect you that doesn't need to perform, that doesn't have to earn love, and I can be that person. You got to be mindful of it, because the moment that you're not mindful of it, you may, this world is set up with systems and colors and lights and programming to program us into other realms and ways of thinking that are detrimental to our health, to sell us stuff, and so
yes.
I find the idea very interesting too. And I laughed a while ago when you kind of talked about it a little bit, about this other you that's inside of you kind of thing, with the fact of, again, from the Christian belief, there's like the mystery of the gospel and of the Bible and what it means. And it said the mystery of Jesus is the fact that there's Christ in me, the hope of glory, of like Jesus is in you if you believe it and you receive it. And so you allow this part of yourself that loves everybody, that's going to turn the other cheek, that's going to bless them that curse you, that's not going to seek revenge over stupid, petty stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? That does good deeds simply because he loves everyone. And it's not a Jesus outside of you, but a Jesus within you, this good aspect of yourself that's in everyone. You just don't know how to connect with it. You've never been told. I mean, this is an aspect of everyone can connect with. And the other sides are in there too. The demons, the devil, the Satan. If it's not within you, it's definitely not without you. All of that stuff is taking place within us, and we feed it and we guide it and we can interact. And it's beautiful because we like to look at things outside of us. And I think it helps us, right? We are definitely, we're helping with ritual and, being able to see things that remind us of things inwardly. We see a cross, an image of a cross that reminds us of what he did for me. That's something he did just for me or whatever. We see colors. We do rituals. We wear jewelry, esoteric symbolism. It reminds us of a deep spiritual truth that is already within us, not without us.
That's right. And in my first book, Conscious Being, I actually lay out different levels of conscious awareness where we do have the external back to the internal, right? Because it can be a journey for us. I might first live in the level of consciousness that everything is outside of me and that what I see is the only reality, and all those programs I've been taught, I might, feel like a victim to the world. But as I grow and evolve, I start to recognize that there are different levels of awareness. And ultimately, we come to a place where we realize it's all within us. And I'm literally projecting onto the world, right? So the more I know that I am love, the more I see the world as loving. The more I know that I am peace, the more I see peace in the world. So we start to experience our core vibration. We talk a lot in our culture now about attracting, the law of attraction. And I actually am changing that to the law of radiance. Can I be the love that I want to see? Can I be the peace that I'm looking for? Then when I am literally vibrating in that frequency, I'm actually radiating that into the world, and then I see it everywhere, right? Because what I'm experiencing externally is really a projection of what I'm experiencing internally. And then I can start to become curious about what is the life I want to create, and how do I start tuning into a different frequency within me so that I can start to experience life in a new and different way.
Yeah. And that really is the key to everything, as far as your happiness, being content, manifestation, whatever is about, and that's what our spiritual reality is. Somebody was in my inbox the other day and was asking me a little bit about that very thing, and was asking, like, am I more of a idealist? And I had to really look it up to see, like, what he was projecting of, like, the definition of what that means or whatever, like seeing things that the way that they should be versus the way that they are. But it works hand in hand. Like, because, if you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at change. And if your spirituality, your mindset is not practical, where it's having real world implications, then it's in vain. So, but all of that starts within, and that your own inner journey, and the way that you view things, the way that you view everything, people, again, I was talking about religion, other religions, God, like Christians, gay people, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody has different ways that we have this prejudice because of the ways that we were raised, and we all have to be mindful and all have to undo that stuff, so that we can make sure that we're not being influenced by these outside sources that don't have your best interest in mind.
Right. And
we're all victims to it, without a doubt.
Yeah. And the question I always ask, going back to, is what does it create when I believe this, right? What does it create in my life when I believe this? What would it be like? What would it feel like if I were to be free from that? What would get created if I were to be more open to a different point of view? We see that in politics right now, just so much finger pointing. What if I can be more open? What if I can be more curious, rather than thinking that I have the answer, or that the way I was programmed to believe is the ultimate truth?
Yeah.
It's a truth in relative reality, and we all see it differently. So let me be curious about this, rather than thinking I have the answer.
Yeah. It's huge. And, even with this podcast, I talk to so many people from all walks of life and all backgrounds, and the listeners are the same, right? All eclectic walks of life and backgrounds. And, there's some interesting things that I hear that I don't really resonate with. It could be, they could be scary. Like, there was this one lady, it stands out for some reason, a couple years ago. She was talking about she was in a relationship with a being from the Octurians or something like that, Ashtar Command, that she was in a romantic relationship with an off-world entity, but I could see what it was doing in her, and now she doesn't need acceptance and need outside. It was, you tell those things, and it's like, I don't know how, I don't know if it's real. I don't know if she's making it up. Is she really in this relationship? But at this point, it's like, I want to see the fruit and what it's producing. Like, your truth, your reality is delusions for other people if they've never experienced it. They have no grid of understanding, but what is the fruit from it? There was a preacher that I used to listen to a lot, and he said, they may disagree with your doctrine and your belief systems and stuff, but they can't disagree with your love. As long as love is coming out of you, and that's your fruit, because your beliefs prove, your actions prove what you believe. If there's any validity to it, if it's real, if there's repeatability, like a bunch of interesting things. So I'm in a place where like I'm cool with it. Like if that's what you believe, first of all, I don't know that it's not real. Like I don't know that that he's not visiting you in the astral realms and y'all are married and have big kids on other planets. Like that's what I don't know that. And I don't know if it's not healthy because it's not my truth. I've never experienced it. I do have to approach it from this place of let me see where you're coming from. And and I know that's an extreme example, right? But all of us have those examples, within our own lives, and they may not seem as extreme, but they are, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's so easy to get caught up in all of that instead of asking the fundamental question that you just asked in some way, and that is, can I be the frequency of love today? What would it take for me to be more the frequency of love, the frequency of peace? And what gets created when I tune into that instead of all the different, belief systems or the theologies or the doctrines? Yeah.
Yeah, because they're endless.
Yeah, it never ends. And then maybe it's as profoundly as simple as, how can I be more the frequency of love today? What would it take for me? Maybe that's the question to live in.
I think it is. That's definitely my answer, and I think what I believe that is and what that looks like maybe is different for everybody, but love and just our definition of treating people how you want to be treated, similar experiences, but which is the height of my spirituality. If we're becoming more loving, if we're these mindfulness and meditations, like asking love to come into your heart and becoming love to others and becoming of service and things like that. So which against, there is no doctrines, right? There is no rules or regulations. Nobody can judge that. You can't disagree with that because it is love. And so hopefully that challenges other people, man, to step out and find if there's any belief systems, if there's any doctrines or dogmas that's pushing you away from love, whether it's politics, like, turn it off. You know what I'm saying? If there's any outside sources, family members that are, causing division and pushing you away from love, being love in your own life, in every area, man, every area. So TJ, man, I really enjoyed this episode, bro. Thanks for coming on, hanging out with me. If people are interested about your work and they want to book a session with you, they want to read your book and get trained in all this stuff, where's a good place for them to connect with you?
tjwoodward.com. I have some amazing online courses, my books, my workbooks, all of that you can find on tjwoodward.com. And thank you so much. I loved our conversation today. And anytime I can be in the conversation about how we can be the frequency of love, because the truth is that's how we can actually start to change the world. We don't change the world through fighting, resisting, and trying to get our point across, but through being this frequency. And more of us are tuning into it. I just feel like we're in a time of rapid acceleration of a transformation on the planet. So thank you for having this as a platform to speak to that.
Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me. Really enjoyed it. Have you been to Michael Beckwith's church? I've seen you've done some stuff with him or on this podcast. Have you been to his church?
So I'm actually ordained by Michael. So Michael and I are friends, and I've done some work with him and collaborated with him. And Yeah, I started the first satellite of Agape up here in the Bay Area about 2 years ago. So it's in Oakland. I mean, now it's virtually, but yeah, we were honored that he asked us to be the very first Agape satellite. And his vision is to have Agapes all over the world now. So I'm grateful to be part of, helping that, because he is on fire with a powerful message. And I'm really, really grateful for my connection with him.
So awesome, man. Good stuff, man. Thanks for coming on, hanging out with me, man. I'm sure we'll connect again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right.
Peace.
Many blessings, bro. TJ Woodward, ladies and gentlemen. Conscious recovery. Consciousness is powerful. Being conscious of everything. Being conscious of love, that you are loved. Like what can they, there is no greater, law than the law of love. I mean, the beautiful thing, again, Jesus taught this stuff, man. And it's so funny how we get all kinds of other messages out of the message of Christ outside of love. You know what I'm saying? When we like to debate and point fingers and who's right and who's wrong and all this stuff. But, Christ talked about that all of the law and all of the prophets, the entire Bible, all of it, everything, every jot and every tittle, all of it hangs upon love. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your being, and to love your neighbor as yourself. If you do those two things, love God, love people, honor people, then you fulfill the entirety of the law. That's when I came into that revelation, that's what set me free from like trying to keep commandments and thinking that inwardly it comes with it. It's pride that comes with it. But you think that like you're closer to God than other people. You think that you're doing something to be accepted of God, and that's not the way. It's of grace. It's the free gift of grace by faith. Faith is believing in it. You don't have it unless you believe it. You have to believe to receive. Activating your faith that you are loved, that you are accepted, that God has a beautiful plan for you, to prosper you, to bless you, not to harm you. Listen, we're talking about this aspect of you that exists, that is all of those things. The things that you don't like there's an aspect of you that is already in you. You're not becoming, you already are. You're not going to be, it's already in there. You just got to find the ways to get it out. Speaking to it, identifying it, seeing it, introducing yourself as that, whatever it is, to create that life that you want for yourself. And a lot of people look at that as far as like we're dealing with manifestation with money and finances and wealth and careers and all that stuff. But an aspect of you that loves more, the aspect of you that gives more, the aspect of you that is present. Against such there is no love. It's there. It's for you. You're not becoming. You already are. That stuff is not. You're not going to receive it outside of you. It's already in you. If you've dreamed it, if you can think about it, it's already in there. The process is how do we get it out? And I think that it is through mindfulness. I think that it is through meditation. I think that it is through prayer. See, that stuff activates it. What you already are is already there. You might not see the results of it until you start taking steps in that direction. Until you start saying yes to the call, right? And that's a process. Manifestation is definitely a process. Seed time and harvest is always going to be in the earth. So there's going to be a time where you have to plant the seed. You got to dig the ground, dig the hole, put the seed in, cover it up, water it, make sure it's getting proper sunlight, make sure it's starting to grow, get all the weeds from around it. Like there's process in that. For everything in your life. It's not instant, but you got to stick to it. You can't just put that seed down and leave. If you're lucky, something might come up, but you have to tend to it. You have to sit there and work on it. You have to fight for it. Like it's hard just to put something out there and hope that it prospers and just and leave and go. And that's what we're doing with life. That's what we're doing with careers. That's what we're doing with vision, putting seeds in the ground and not cultivating it. That seed might take 6 months to sprout. To see anything, to show people that there's proof I put something in the ground. You gotta tend to it. So and that's applicable with being consistent Consistency is key for everything. For love, for graduating this earth school, saying yes and responding with love. That never gets old. That's always the answer. All the way down, you can go on your test and mark the answers. That's always it. Trust and responding with love. Trusting God. Again, going back to what Jesus says, loving God. Loving God is that you trust him. Look, I trust you. I'm okay. I'm going to make it. I'm okay. You ain't let me down yet. You ain't gonna let me down now. There's this place of you that's always connected, and you can draw from it at any time for every reason in your life to get God's perspective, which is love, which is not degrading. It's not condemnation. The Bible says there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. As far as I'm concerned, being in Christ Jesus is being in love, perfect love. That's who Jesus is love that became a man. You can change that word out. God is love. He's also this and that, brother. He's judgment. He's retribution too, man. Listen, he's whatever you want him to be. On top of that, he says, I am that I am. Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya. I am that I am, and I will be whatsoever I will be. He's like, whatever you need me to be, I'll be it. Do you need me to be this? Yes. Do you need me to be that? Yeah. Whatever you think I am that to you. If you think that God is just this vengeful, person, father figure that just rains on your parade, he's ready to bash you over the head when you get it wrong in life. Like, he is that because you believe it. You've created a God. It is idolatry, honestly. It's idolatry because you've created an image in the form of this God that's not what I believe to be the true God, which is love, peace, justice. All of that stuff comes into play, but it's a form of idolatry because you're like, it's really pagantry because you're giving the attributes of your father, your dad, or your mom to God. You don't even know it. Because your dad wanted you to perform. Your dad wanted you to get everything right. So now we kind of put that off on God. God wants us to perform. God wants us to get everything right. That's not the truth, man. We project. We're projecting into the world. We're projecting on God. We're projecting on all types of people groups. And looking for reasons to be offended and looking for reasons for people to be wrong. Listen, you got to be mindful of it. I'm saying it so you'll be mindful of it. I definitely had to be mindful of it. I'm starting with myself because I recognize character flaws within me. And there's character flaws and there's things that God has to get out of you to get to those next levels. You can't bring it with you. It's too heavy. It's dense. It belongs at the lower levels. You can't keep eating second grade lunch. You know what I'm saying? In high school or in college, like, you got to get rid of that stuff. Leave it on second grade. Don't try to bring it with you. It can't go up there. And that's it. That's for spiritual reasons. It's truth anyhow. So look, man, thank you guys for hanging out. I really enjoyed connecting with this brother today. Conscious Recovery. Check out his work. His book and all that good stuff will be in the description and the links of this video and all that good stuff. So check that out. Again, if you guys have not had a chance to get a free copy of my audiobook, you can get that by going to the links as well. If you click the Audible trial link, you get a free copy of my audiobook, and it gives me a kickback on all the downloads and all the sign-ups, and it doesn't even cost you anything. You have to sign up. You have to put a card in, but it doesn't charge you, and you can cancel right after, and you still get the book and 30 days free. Win-win situation. Make sure you do that. Check it out. People were begging me for the audiobook. I put out the physical. They're like, nah, I don't want the physical, man. I don't read physical books. Do the audio. Okay. I didn't want to. I did it. I did it for you, man. I did it for you. It was a long, strenuous process. Took a while to be here. Three months in the making almost, and now it's finally here. So if you want a copy of it, go get it. It's free. Why not? So the information's there. There's no reason that you can't get a copy of this. So that's there. It's still available on physical, still available on Kindle, all the other places as well. So make sure you check it out. So Nisa says, amen. Thanks, bro. Can we get a book as paperback? I don't have Audible. Yep. Yeah, that link's in the description as well. So you just go and it's on Amazon. So I think when you go to the Amazon link that it shows you the Audible first, but they're all connected. You just pick which one you want. If it's the paperback or audio version or Kindle. So you just pick it there. So yeah, it is available on Amazon as well. Been working hard on a lot of new stuff, messing with some new music. There's some new music already on the Patreon. Doing our prayer session tonight. I don't know if we're going to do some breath work, guided meditation. Really don't know. Really don't have a vision yet. I usually try to listen to the Lord, what he wants to do for the day. And so I usually craft a meditation or focus on that area, whatever I'm feeling. So we'll see what happens. We always have fun, that's for sure. So if you want to get access to our School of the Mystics Thursday night sessions, make sure you join via Patreon. You get access for $1, so it's not too expensive. So everybody can afford that. And if you can't, talk to me. If there's some reason that you can't afford $1, we need to talk, and I'll try to help you out and do whatever I can. So that's available. Last week, we did the prayer session, right? We're just doing a private prayer session on not Discord, but Zoom, and we had about 14 people in there. And I was gonna record it and upload it to whether I put it on YouTube or put it on this Patreon for people to go back and listen to. I accidentally clicked start streaming. So I thought I pushed record, but I clicked stream. And so we're about, 45 minutes into it, and we're taking prayer requests, and somebody's like, you're live on YouTube, right? And so me and my wife are sitting here, we're leading meditation, and we're tapping into prayer with everybody. And I look over, and it's like, I think we had 20 people watching on YouTube. And then we had, at least that's what it said. Like there was like over 100 something before the stream was done. But all these people were watching, and then there's a whole bunch of prayer requests coming through. So I was like, oh wow, why not? So it was a pleasant surprise. Like I've been wanting to do that, to do our live stream prayer sessions again, taking prayers and just being there for people. On the live stream, been super busy, and then we have stuff that's for the memberships and stuff like that we do too on Thursday. So I was like, you know what? So the people who were the patrons who were hanging out with us on Discord and Zoom or whatever, like they still got something special. They got to hang out after, and we had good conversation even after that. So that's probably what we'll do. I'll probably live stream it. I don't know, but I definitely give something special for those who hang around, who were there. We'll hang out after and have conversation. So if you're looking for conversation with like-minded people, we have a really cool community, some really eclectic, awesome people. So make sure that you tap in with us through that. Again, it's $1. If you can't do it, holler at me. We'll make it happen. Speaking of prayer, there's somebody here in I don't know if Michael or Michelle is still watching or not, but asking for prayer. So I'll make sure that I pray, and I'll actually end out with prayer too for you and for anybody who is in need of prayer. So I'll do that, because I know that a lot of people listen to the podcast and they tap into what we're doing, and for many people this is their church, whether their church is closed because of COVID or they just looking for a like-minded community who are just open to discuss other ideas and topics. And you're not going to get kicked out for believing something different. You're not going to be kicked out for wearing a certain shirt. You're not going to be kicked out because you let a curse word slip. Whatever these crazy reasons you get kicked out of churches for these days, it's not going to happen here. So, I do know that people see this as their church, so, and they want prayer. So I'll definitely say a prayer, lift people up. We all need it, right? I don't think anybody is above reproach. I don't think that anybody is in a place where you don't need it. You're just good. You can use it. I can use it for sure. So I'm going to pray. Michelle Essery, asking God to free me from addictions. Could use prayer for that, please. I've never asked anyone to pray for that for me, but I'm struggling with it. It's time for it to end. All right, so we'll bless you out with that. Father, I just thank you that your grace and your love is what enables us to step into freedom. So right now for Michelle, whatever she's dealing with, any of those addictions, what is the root cause of it? That you just send forth your peace right now, all the way to the root, and remove it. Uproot it, get it out. The hurt, the unforgiveness, the bitterness, the rejection, all of it. Sending peace, peace, peace right now. Removing it right now. To be perfect, to be okay, to be comfortable in her skin. And the idea of who you are even without that addiction. Who you are without the hurt, without the trauma. You're blessed, you're loved, you're accepted. Not because what you do, not because of what you did. It's because God's love for you extends to you right now. Send forth peace to Michelle and anyone else listening who just needs an extra touch. They just need some